hope for all. It's called socialism. And I would like to thank and welcome my colleagues here today who've come. Diane Abbott, our Shadow Home Secretary, who actually, I think, was quite looking forward to debates with Amber Rudd, but she's gone on to do something else, and I'll deal with universal credit a bit later on. But Diane is doing a fantastic job in bringing humanity to the whole principles behind the Home Affairs brief and promoting justice and equality. And you'll hear lots from her tonight when she's on BBC Question Time. Diane, thank you and thanks for coming. And Richard Bergen, our Shadow Secretary of State for Justice, is also here today, who is taking the issue of justice reform and prison reform and justice to our society straight out there to the public and in that debate. And he's doing an incredible job around the Shadow Cabinet table. Richard, thank you very much for everything that you do. Yesterday, the Prime Minister suffered the most devastating defeat in Parliament on the most important issue facing our country. The central policy of a government has been decisively rejected. The defeat that she suffered in the vote on the European Union agreement that she had reached was the biggest ever defeat any government has ever faced in British political history. Think about that, the biggest ever defeat on a central plank of it. It's clear that her EU deal is now finished. There can be no question of tweaks or sweeteners from Brussels to bring it back to life. The deal that she brought back, all 500 plus pages of it, is quite clearly a dead deal. She put it to Parliament and it was emphatically rejected. And we now have to realise that the Prime Minister seems completely unable to grasp what has actually happened. She seems to be prepared to send the country hurtling towards a cliff edge. To get a deal that can command a majority in Parliament, Theresa May has to ditch the red lines and get serious about proposals for the future. Talks with party leaders turned out to be simply a stunt, not a serious attempt to engage with the new reality that is needed. No sooner had she said the words in Parliament than the government confirmed that she would not take no deal off the table. So I say to the Prime Minister again, I'm quite happy to talk, but the starting point for any talks about Brexit must be that the threat of a disastrous no-deal outcome is ruled out, taken off the table, and we can talk about the future of the plans that we will put forward and the future relationship with Europe. But take no deal off the table now, please, Prime Minister. And if she won't accept the will of Parliament to take no deal off the table, it will show that she simply isn't serious about reaching a deal. With no deal on the table, the Prime Minister would enter into phony talks just to run down the clock and try to blackmail MPs to vote through her botched deal on a second attempt by threatening the country with the chaos that no deal would bring if they resist her entreaties to support her deal a second time. Instead, Theresa May should show us that she's serious about getting a deal that Parliament supports and that brings the country together by immediately ending the waste of hundreds of millions of pounds of public money preparing for a no-deal outcome which simply cannot take place. The government has set aside £4.8 billion to prepare for no deal. There's so many better things that money could be spent on. instead could support our cash-starved public services. 4.8 billion would pay for every 2 to 4-year-old to get free nursery education for a year. 4.8 billion would help the crisis of social care and funding in our NHS. 4.8 billion would help the crisis of rough sleeping homelessness. 4.8 billion could do so much for youth services and young people around our country, but no, the government is prepared to spend 4.8 billion of our money on preparing for a no-deal Brexit in order to try and threaten MPs into voting for her deal, which has already been declared bankrupt by Parliament itself. Prime Minister, take it off the table and have a serious discussion about how we approach the future. No deal would risk huge damage to our economy, jobs and living standards. About that there is no doubt. So Labour is open to discussions because we must end the crisis caused by the government's botched Brexit negotiations and find a solution that meets the needs of the whole country. We, the Labour Party, have set out an alternative plan, and I've made clear we would support a deal on that basis. The government may have survived a confidence vote for now, but we have a government in name only. The scale of the defeat on Tuesday has shredded the last vestiges of its authority. If the government had any confidence in itself, it would go back to the people for a new mandate. While Brexit consumes all the government's energy, the vital issues that affect people most directly, cash-starved schools, the NHS at breaking point, rising bills, unaffordable houses, have all gone to the back of the queue. 2.5 years of Brexit bungling and failure have left Parliament in deadlock. Nothing can be decided, nothing can get done. We believe that the best outcome for this crisis, for the country as a whole, remains calling a general election to break the deadlock and find a solution that works for the whole country. And that is why I tabled a motion of no confidence last night, and I thank all those colleagues that supported the motion of no confidence last night. And we will come back on it again if necessary, because we are determined to deal with the issues facing this country and also give the people a choice of who their MPs should be and who their government should be, whether they have one that stands up for them or one that shows the degree of incompetence that this government has shown. But in the meantime, all options are on the table. We're serious about finding a way through. Given the severity of the crisis, it would be wrong to rule any of them out. Our first option is the alternative plan we've laid out over the past year. Labour will put down its own amendment to the proposals next week, setting out our alternative plan, based around a permanent customs union with the European Union, a strong single market relationship, and a guarantee at least to keep pace with all EU rights at work, environmental protections and consumer standards. We will not take part or allow this country to become part of a race to the bottom in which the poorest and most vulnerable lose out in order to appease the very richest and the biggest corporations in the world. No, we want to see a protection for the most vulnerable within our society. Those three elements provide the essential building blocks of a sensible deal, with a clear potential to win the majority support in Parliament. And I believe such a deal would help to bring people together and overcome the divisions in our country. But if the government remains intransigent, if support for Labour's alternative is blocked for party advantage, and the country is facing the potential disaster of no deal, our duty will then be to look at other options which we've set out in our conference motion, including that of a public vote. We are in this position because the Conservatives and other parties have deliberately chosen to deepen divisions, setting those who voted leave against those who voted to remain. People voted leave, people voted remain. But we're the party that has consistently sought to bring people together to find a way through that respects people's concern, whichever way they voted in the referendum. Because I believe the real divide in our country is not between Leave and Remain voters. It's between the many who do the work, create the wealth, pay their taxes, work in our society, work in our hospitals, work in our schools, work in our factories, deliver the economy and the living standards for the rest of us. And those others, those few, who break the rules, who dodge their taxes, who run away and don't support our society and our economy. It's between the many and the few. Labour set out in our manifesto in 2017 the plans we have for an investment-led economy, for good jobs, for a higher basic wage, for an investment in education, in housing and health, and all those issues. We set all that out because we believe that's the direction in which the majority of people in this country want to go. But on Tuesday, while the country's attention was fixed on Westminster and the vote that took place, and it was a dramatic day in Parliament. I'd never seen such chaos in any government, and I've been in Parliament 35 years, and I've seen plenty of chaos in government, but that was the worst by a long way. We had yet another demonstration of the harsh reality of what this government is about. The Department of Work and Pensions, and the MP for Hastings and Rye is indeed the Secretary of State for the Department of Work and Pensions, quietly decided to announce another cut to Social Security, which, according to analysis done by Age UK, could leave some couples up to £7,000 a year worse off. Their latest cut will force yet more people onto the government's cruel universal credit scheme. Couples in which one spouse is a pensioner will no longer be entitled to pension credit. So just imagine this. If you've paid into the system all your life and you've retired on a low income, and now the government decides you'll be poorer just because your partner is younger than you. That's disgraceful, that's wrong, and that was announced on Tuesday while the rest of the nation was watching Parliament and what was going on there. How typical of the Tories, how typical of Amber Rudd. Whether they voted Leave or Remain, people want an end to these injustices. Remember, the vast, vast majority of people don't think of themselves as Remainers or Leavers. However, they're regarded by the media as somehow or other a political class that's got to be negotiated around. If we allow ourselves to be permanently divided on these artificial lines, it's only the privileged elite that will benefit, while the majority lose out. Yes. So, our message to the government is, you've lost your vote in Parliament. You survived yesterday on the loyalty, the rather thin loyalty of Tory MPs. And we are determined to get a deal with the European Union, which, as I've explained, sets out the three pillars that we will put forward. We are sensible, we're serious, and we're positive about this. But our entire focus as a party is on the reality of people's lives in this country. The poverty, the insecurity, the lack of investment, the concerns and fears for the future. Bring people together to create that better society and that better world. Have that relationship with Europe that gives us the customs union, gives us the trade, protects the rights. Have that relationship that is positive, that is open. I want to live in a country that doesn't rely on food banks, that doesn't rely on payday loans, that doesn't rely on loan sharks. I want to live in a country where people feel engaged, enthused and positive for the future. That is the Labour way, and that will be the forefront of our minds during the next few weeks of crucial debate and voting in Parliament. Deliver a society that works for all, not just the few. Thank you very much. Okay. If you move down now.